I'm Harrison Graham. Welcome into another episode of For Verts, an NFL and college football show here on YouTube. And today we are going to preview the NFC South. We already did our AFC South division preview. Go check that out on the channel. Got a playlist for all of these division previews. This is our second one. We're going to break down the Falcons, who have been in the headlines this week, Bucs, Saints, and Panthers one by one. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to support For Verts, there's really three easy and free ways to do it. Number one, hit the like button. Really helps us out. If you like NFL and college football coverage, we got that for you on a daily basis. Interact with each other in the comments. Shout out your favorite team. Predict who's going to win this division. Just say, hey, what's up? Whatever it is. And subscribe for free. Helps us out. The more we grow, the more videos we can do for you guys. So if you're interested and enjoy this type of content that we're going to jump into here, those three ways really, really help. Okay, all right. Are the Atlanta Falcons ready to take off? Are they ready to fly here? Well, they're certainly big favorites at this point to win the NFC South, both in the betting market and I think just from a roster construction standpoint, it's pretty clear that Atlanta has gone all in, at least pretty close to. Now, if they were all in just on this year, I still don't think they would have taken Michael Penix with the number 8 overall pick, but they've made a lot of aggressive moves. They gave Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed despite coming off an Achilles injury. They just traded for Matt Judon and signed Justin Simmons, two high-level defensive starters. They have young players entering their prime like Bijan Robinson, Drake London. They're hoping to get Kyle Pitts on track with their new offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson. Offensive line is good. There's a lot of talent on this roster, and especially in a division that's average. Like, Atlanta on paper is the team to beat, especially if Kirk Cousins is healthy. Now, the question is not only is he healthy, but can he win and can he win big? Because in reality, yeah, Kirk Cousins has had a nice career. He's had a lot of winning records. He's played in some playoff games. He's only won one, though. I think he's 1-4 in playoff games. Now he's 36, coming off an Achilles tear for a quarterback that's already not that athletic. Now, I think he's in a great situation given those facts. Offensive line, that should keep him upright. Good playmakers to get the ball out quickly and let them go to work. But the question for me is, with the moves Atlanta made, these aren't just moves to go 9-8 and sneak into the playoffs. These are moves to, hey, let's win the division and go on a run in the NFC, which many consider to be the weaker of two conferences, and I would agree with that notion. I think you look at this, and I do agree that Atlanta's the team to beat in this division. Where I'm still asking myself is, can they live up to the hype? Are they a team ready to make a deep run? It's A, Cousins' health, and can he elevate to another level? And B, you got question marks at all three of your key positions. I think the top three most important positions in the NFL are head coach, quarterback, and offensive coordinator. DC would be fourth, but I think the defense will at least be solid enough. Raheem Morris, first-year head coach, I trust that the defense will be better. I don't know how he'll be as a head coach. He was not very good in Tampa. Now, he rebuilt his image. He's had a lot of interviews. Sean McVay vouches for him. All that stuff goes a long way. I think he was worthy of a second opportunity here. Offensive coordinator, I like Zach Robinson. I like that he's from a Sean McVay coaching tree. He's never called plays in the NFL. It doesn't matter where you come from. That's always at least a question. Now, obviously, not all 32 NFL teams, if they needed to hire an offensive coordinator, would be able to hire for, a play caller with NFL play calling experience because there's just not enough of them. So, you have to take chances on guys. And coming from Sean McVay, that has a pretty good history considering the other guys that have come from that coaching tree. And then Kirk coming off the injury with his age and, his lack of playoff success. I think there's talent all across the board. I think Kirk is a good player, but it gives me some pause to sit in here and say, yeah, this is a team going to the NFC Championship. So we'll see. At the end of the video, I will have my division predictions, so stay tuned for that. Are we forgetting about the Bucs? Are we forgetting about Tampa? I think all the hype is around Atlanta right now, and rightfully so. But the Buccaneers not only won the division last year, but they won a playoff game. And they battled with the Lions for, 3 quarters or so before Detroit pulled away. Baker Mayfield was one of the better stories in the NFL last year. Rebuilt his career, got back on track, got paid after a good season. Thought he played well in the playoffs. The question is he ready for an encore? Because Baker's had an interesting career, right? He had a pretty good rookie year in Cleveland, pretty decent second year, couple of not great years, to be frank. Gets traded to Carolina, doesn't work out there. Remember this time last year, he was competing with Kyle Trask for the starting job, gets the starting job, starts a little slow, but then kind of takes off. And now we're wondering, can he find that year-to-year consistency? Because that has not been the case at this point in his career. It's been very up and down, like some good, some really bad, not even a starter anymore. Now he's back. He loses Dave Canales, so that's certainly something to monitor, as you have to question whether or not his former offensive coordinator, who certainly, I think it's fair to say, helped him jump his career, is losing him going to be a factor. They hired Liam Cohen from Kentucky. He was with McVay before that, so again, another McVay disciple. And, can he keep Baker rolling? Can he keep this offense where it was, especially down the stretch last year? They got Mike Evans back on a 2-year deal. Chris Godwin is still in the fold. I think they'll be able to run the football a little bit better this year. They locked up Tristan Wirfs. I like the pieces they have. It's really that Baker-Cohen relationship. And I do wonder with the defense, it feels like the defense is getting a little older. You know what I'm saying? Like Shaq Barrett's retired now. Vita Vea is another year older. They got some key pieces. Levante David's a little older. They traded Carlton Davis to Detroit. Is that secondary going to hold up? So, I feel like Tampa, I think we are forgetting about them a bit, but they do have question marks with the new OC. And roster-wise, it doesn't feel like they really have gotten better or worse. Now, could a couple of draft picks light it up? Could some guys improve? Of course. But if you're comparing them in Atlanta, who took more steps to improve their football team, it's clearly the Falcons. Big upgrade at quarterback. Weapons on the offense. They add Darnell Mooney, who I didn't even mention. You add a couple of key defensive players just in the last week or so. Now, Atlanta had a gap to close because they were clearly not as good as Tampa last year. But I feel like Tampa, roster-wise, didn't really take steps to take another step forward. They're kind of banking on Baker continuing to grow and, just to organically take those next steps, which sometimes you have to do that based on salary cap. They had to pay Mike Evans, et cetera. But they feel like a team that's kind of similar to last year. I expect them to be competitive, but I don't know how high the ceiling is. And I think questioning the height of the ceiling of a team isn't more valid than when you're talking about the New Orleans Saints. What are the Saints? They entered this year as kind of just a boring, yet competitive team. They quietly went 9-8 last year. Now, they had the easiest schedule in the NFL. I'd have to double-check this. They either had 0 or 1 win against a team 500 or better last year, so they were the ultimate. We beat bad teams, we lost to good teams. That's why we're 9-8. That's kind of what they did. And just by the law of averages, you would expect their schedule to end up being a little tougher this year. Now, here's what we know about New Orleans. Derek Carr is at least capable of being solid. If he has a good year, he could be a top 15 quarterback this season. Now, I think his days of having a top 10 type of season are probably over. He hasn't been that in 2, 3, 4 years. He's probably been between 14 and 20 the last 2, 3 years. Last year in Vegas, last year in New Orleans. Started really slow last year, but finished strong. We also know that while I don't think Dennis Allen is a head coach, he's going to have the defense playing well. He can coach defense. So I think you feel good about at least having a fairly steady quarterback and a head coach who I don't think is a great head coach, but will have the defense competitive. What we don't know is, what I just said, can Dennis Allen prove to be effective on game days, not just as a defensive play caller, but also Klint Kubiak, I think, is the most important person in that building this year. They bring him over from the 49ers as their new play caller, replacing Pete Carmichael, who was terrible. Kubiak does have play calling experience. I like that. He called plays for the Vikings a few years ago. Also a few games for Denver in 2022 when they fired Nate Hackett. And so he's done the job before. His dad's obviously, one of the better offensive minds in this century. talking about Gary Kubiak. So he worked for Shanahan last year. Like, he's got a good kind of track record now in terms of references around him. So I thought that hire was good. And they got to start faster offensively. Derek Carr really struggled early last year. It got to the point where it was like, are his days of being a highish level starter kind of over? Now, he finished strong. Last 5 games were very good. But he's got to come out of the gates faster, and that comes down largely to Klint Kubiak playing to his strengths, getting him going on play action. He's pretty good on boots and stuff like that. And if they can do that, they'll have a chance to be successful. But ultimately, my take on the Saints are they're a high floor team, but a pretty low ceiling team. Like, I don't think they'll win less than 7 games, but I don't think they can win more than 10. Carr, I don't think, can generate a ton of explosive plays. I like Chris Olave. He should be good. But what's their identity? Their running backs have been banged up. Kamara's a year older. Kendre Miller can't stay healthy. Like, to me, if they were going to be really successful, if Miller was healthy, like, run the ball a lot with Kendre and Kamara, Jamal Williams, play action off of it, and play defense. But if they don't have a consistent runner, it's hard to do that. And if you're asking Carr to step back 35, 40 times a game and pick you apart, I just don't think that's an effective strategy. So, again, you see that last sentence there. What's the best case scenario? Could they win the division at like 10-7? That's probably the best case. They get to 10 wins and that wins this division. But I don't think they could win a playoff game. I think wild card teams, either Dallas or Philly would be favored against them. Whoever comes out of the East that doesn't win the division, like the Packers, Bears, or Lions, whoever doesn't win that division, one of those other teams as a wild card team, that would be a tough matchup. So, I feel like they're kind of stuck in the middle. They keep playing this salary cap game where they're pushing money down the road. They're very good at manipulating the salary cap, but it also kind of limits how aggressive you can actually be in free agency and on the trade market. So, I don't know. I think that this is a big year for Carr. If he's kind of more of the same, then I think in 2025, you might be looking at a full reset where they move on from Dennis Allen. They try to move on from Carr. Maybe they pay the piper in 25 with the cap stuff and try to rebuild toward 26. So we'll see. Carolina. Has Carolina improved? You would hope so. I liked some of their draft picks. I think the goal for them this year is just take steps forward. I think the unique part of the NFL is most teams enter the season thinking, we at least have a puncher's chance to be a playoff team. Carolina, if they're being realistic, I'm sure they're not communicating this in their building, especially to players. They are one of probably 4 or 5 teams that know deep down they've got very little to no chance of making the playoffs. That doesn't mean this year isn't important. That doesn't mean this year you don't have something to play for. All eyes are on Bryce Young. His development this year is the most important thing for the franchise. Like, the Panthers are viewed as a laughingstock right now for how that trade with the Bears went. Like, you guys have probably seen the graphic on social media. Bears received Caleb Williams, they indirectly got Rome Odunze, Tyreek Stevenson, Darnell Wright, DJ Moore, yada, yada, yada. Panthers, Bryce Young. So they really need to develop this guy, and if they can't, they're probably going to have to pivot off of him because last year looked rough. He didn't have much to work with. I think they added some interesting pieces like Xavier Legette. I'm excited to watch him. But they really need him to develop this year, and if he can't, they probably need to have the wherewithal to pivot in 2025. Enter Dave Canales. I think they hired a coach that if anyone can get the best out of Bryce Young, this guy can. He was Seattle's quarterbacks coach. The first year Geno Smith started there, best year of his career. I think he gets a lot of credit for Geno revitalizing his career in Seattle. So Tampa hired him as the OC. He did the same thing with Baker last year. His career was dead as well. All of a sudden, he plays well enough to get paid $100 million, which, by the way, Geno did too. Can he get Bryce Young to a level where he's probably not going to be a top 10 guy in this league? I just don't think he has the physical attributes to do it. He's undersized, limited arm, not the best athlete. But could you be entering 2026 where it's like, okay, he's at least a solid starter. Let's see if we can take more steps. I think that's possible. The guy did go number 1 overall. He was a hell of a player at Alabama. I think Dave Canales has proven he can play to quarterback strengths. and help these guys at least get their confidence back. We'll see if he can do that with Bryce Young. Now, obviously, he's the head coach. He has other duties, but I got to think him and Bryce are spending a lot of hours together in the film room, on the practice field, and really trying to hone in on that craft and take the steps needed to become a solid NFL quarterback. So my take on Carolina this year is this. If Bryce Young takes good steps forward, can they win 5 or 6 games? I think that'd be a pretty good success for Dave Canales in year one. They went 2-15 last year and got blown out a bunch. Can you win 5 games and at least be in 12 or 13 of the 17? Have a chance entering the fourth quarter in 75% of your games? If you do that, I think that's a clear step forward. Last year, I thought down the stretch they were more competitive. They were in games late. They didn't fold completely despite the Frank Reich disaster and David Tepper shenanigans as an owner. So I think that's at least something to hold on to. But they're not ready to compete for this division. And quite frankly, and diehard NFC South fans, don't shoot the messenger. This is just how I feel. I think this is the worst division in football. I think even the Falcons, who I like, I'm picking them to win the division and losing the wild card round. If you tell me Green Bay's coming to Atlanta, Detroit, Dallas, or Philadelphia, I'd probably pick any of those teams right now to beat the Falcons in a playoff game, given Kirk's history in the playoffs. But they're very talented. They're certainly capable, and I could pivot off that opinion at some point during the season. But right now, I think the Falcons win this division, 10-11 wins. I think the Saints and Bucs hover around 500. Saints maybe more like an 8-9 team. And Carolina, again, can you win 5 games? If you won 5 games, I think you'd be pretty happy with that season. But that's how I see the NFC South breaking down. Our next division will be the AFC East, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, light up the comments, like the video to show support here on this show. And we will see you guys next time here on 4 Verts.